Alright, today is day 2. We'll be starting the timer right now. Okay, so today's Substack is about the art of being unreachable, on desire, depth, and the seduction of having somewhere else to be by Alexis McElroy. Let's go. There is something intoxicating about a person who is deeply occupied with something you cannot access. There is a quiet allure to someone who is absorbed in their own interests. They feel layered, self-contained, and slightly undiscovered. They move through the world with a quiet confidence, a self-possession that feels almost forbidden. You sense it immediately, the way they hold your attention without trying, the way their absence linger longer than their presence. They are not performing, they are not available on demand. Nothing is more alluring than someone who has somewhere else to be, even if that place is internal. This is not about playing games. Seduction begins when your attention is no longer available on demand. It is about cultivating a life so rich, so absorbing that other people become a delicious addition rather than the main event. It is the difference between someone who waits for validation and someone who creates it themselves. The difference between boring and magnetic, between forgettable and unforgettable. The problem with being one-dimensional. Let me be blunt. If your entire existence revolves around dating, relationships, or getting someone to notice you, you have already lost. Not because wanting connection is wrong, but because desperation has a scent. It clings to you. People can smell it before you even speak. I learned this the hard way. There was a time where I had interests, real ones, books that consumed entire weekends, games that required strategy, focus, complete exhaustion. But the moment romance entered the picture, everything else dissolved. I became flat, predictable, entirely available. And in that availability, I lost the very thing that makes someone worth pursuing: mystery. Mystery is not secrecy, it is selectiveness. When you have nothing else, no craft, no obsession, no private world, you become a mirror. You reflect back whatever the other person wants, hoping it will be enough to keep them interested. It never is, because the most seductive people are not mirrors. They are locked rooms, and everyone wants the key. Literature has always understood this. Consider Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice, a woman intellectually engaged, often reading, observing, forming judgment. She is absorbed in her own world of wit and critical thinking. Mr. Darcy, despite his wealth and status, is the one who must recalibrate himself to earn her regard. Her interest is never something he can demand. It emerges only once respect and intellectual parity are established. Elizabeth's power lies not in her availability, but in her autonomy. She has a life of the mind that exists entirely independent of his desire for her. The alchemy of depth. Depth is not accidental. It is cultivated, built in the hours you spend alone, absorbed in something that has nothing to do with how you are perceived. A man who plays piano in the late hours, fingers moving across keys like a lover's touch. A woman who paints in her studio, splattered with color, unreachable. Someone who writes, who codes, who builds furniture with their hands, who gardens, who cooks elaborate meals for no one but themselves. These are the people who stop you mid-sentence, who make you lean in, who make you wonder what they are thinking about when they go quiet. They have a texture, layers, a richness that cannot be accessed in a single conversation, a single night, a single month. You could spend years with them and still discover new rooms. Independent interest gives a person dimension. Not everyone is immediately available, and that restraint is part of the allure. When someone belongs fully to their own passions, they feel less performative and more compelling. They do not need you to complete them. They are already whole, and that wholeness is devastatingly attractive. The power of absence. Mystique lives in the part of your lives that don't need witnesses. A private hobby is a kind of seduction. You disappear into it, and people feel the absence. When you disappear into your craft, your ritual, your obsession, people notice. They feel it. The way your attention shifts away from them and towards something they cannot touch. It creates hunger. They want to know where you go when you are not with them. What you think about, what fills your time. This is not about withholding or playing hard to get. It is about genuinely having a life that interests you more than constant validation. The more interest you cultivate in your own life, the less you feel compelled to seek it from others. When your days are full, when you have projects that excite you, skills you are honing, worlds you are building, other people become optional rather than essential. And there is nothing more magnetic than someone who does not need you to feel complete. Think about the people who have captivated you. I guarantee they were not the ones who made themselves endlessly available. They were the ones who had somewhere else to be. The painter who could not meet you until after her studio hours. The musician practicing for a show you were not invited to. The writer who disappeared for days into their manuscript. The entrepreneur consumed by building something bigger than any single relationship. The most magnetic people are never bored. They are busy becoming. There is something intoxicating about a person who is deeply occupied with something you cannot access. The refuge you create. Hobbies are not frivolous. They are sanctuaries. Hobbies are where desire goes when it no longer needs approval. Spaces you create that belong entirely to you, where you manipulate reality, build worlds, master skills. There is power in that, a quiet dominance. You are not waiting for someone to make you interesting. You are actively become someone worth knowing. I think about the hours I wasted, obsessing over someone's silence, analyzing their every word, ruminating on whether they felt what I felt. What if I had spent that time creating instead? Writing, painting, learning an instrument, building something with my hands. I would have had something to show for my pain. I would have transformed longing into craft, desire into skill. I would have built someone who did not need them to feel whole. A rich inner life quiets the need for outside attention. The fuller your attention is on your own becoming, the quieter the hunger for external interest grows. A rich inner life does not just make you more interesting, it makes you immune to the games, the breadcrumbs, the intermittent reinforcement that keeps so many people trapped in cycles of longing. When your life genuinely interests you, validation from others becomes optional. You stop tolerating less because you know your time is valuable. You know what it feels like to be absorbed in something that actually nourishes you. The unexpected dividend. Here is something I did not anticipate. Hobbies can become livelihoods. The people who knit can sell their work. The ones who throw pottery can open a shop. The baker can start a business. The coder can freelance. The writer can publish. Skills cultivated in private hours for no reason other than the love of their craft becomes valuable in ways that corporate ladders and resume building never promised. I envy the people who saw this early, who spent their youth developing mastery instead of credentials, who built something with their hands and now leverage it into freedom. I am starting from scratch now, learning what I should have learned a decade ago. But better late than buried in resentment, working jobs that do not see me, climbing ladders that lead nowhere I want to be. The digital age made us forget the value of slow accumulation, of craftsmanship, of skills that require years to refine. But that value has not disappeared. It is waiting for those willing to cultivate it. And in the process of cultivating it, you become the kind of person people cannot stop thinking about. The most magnetic people are never bored. They are busy becoming. If you have spent too long directing your attention outwards, towards dating apps, towards whether someone texted back, towards the validation of strangers, this is your invitation to turn inward. To build a life so compelling that you forget to check if anyone is watching. You don't cultivate mystique by hiding. You cultivate it by having a life that doesn't orbit reaction. The possibilities are endless. What follows are not instructions but invitations, portals into different versions of yourself. Choose what calls to you. Choose what quiets the noise. Choose what makes you forget to perform. Document your transformation, your thoughts, the architecture of your inner world. Let the page become the place where you make sense of desire, ambition, heartbreak. There is something clarifying about watching your own handwriting move across paper. It slows you down, forces you to metabolize your thoughts rather than simply react to them. Your anxieties lose the grip when you name them. Your dreams become tangible when you write them down. Mystique is built in the hours you don't explain. The journal holds what you don't need to share with anyone else. It becomes proof that you have an interior life rich enough to sustain you. If you want to return to reading, start here. Keep a book in the bathroom. Open it each time you sit down. You'll be surprised how quickly you move through chapters when you trade scrolling for pages. Reading rewires your brain. It teaches you to focus, to sit with complexity, to inhabit other minds. It makes you conversant in ideas that did not originate with you. You become someone who references novels, who quotes poets, who has thoughts shaped by literature rather than algorithms. Let stories remind you that there are infinite ways to be, infinite lives to learn, and infinite depths to explore. Learn an instrument, piano, guitar, voice, whatever calls to you. Let music become your language when words fail. Seduce yourself first. Everything else will follow. Learning an instrument is an exercise in patience, in delayed gratification, in trusting that small daily efforts accumulate into mastery. Your fingers will stumble at first. Your voice will crack. Your rhythm will falter. And then slowly, something shifts. You play a song all the way through without stopping. You sing a note that feels like it came from somewhere deeper than your throat. Music teaches you that beauty requires discipline, that expression demands technique. It gives you a private world to disappear into, late nights at the piano, afternoons with a guitar, mornings practicing skills. People will hear you and wonder what you are thinking about when your hands move across the keys. Paint or draw, create something for nothing. Let your hands remember what it feels like to be the source of beauty. There is something meditative about watching colors spread across a canvas, about shading in the curve of a fade, about turning a blank page into a world. Painting silences the voice that demands constant productivity. It asks only that you show up, that you pay attention, that you trust your instinct. You will make ugly things before you make beautiful ones. That is part of the process. What matters is that you are building something that did not exist before you touched it. Each stroke is a choice. Each choice reveals something about how you see. You become someone who notices light, who understands shadows, who can translate the intangible into form. Throw pottery, shape clay with your hands. Feel the sensuality of creation, the way patience and pressure you form. Clay is forgiving and unforgiving at once. It responds to your touch, but collapses if you force it. You learn to work with resistance rather than against it. Your hands will be covered in mud. Your clothes will be stained. You will center the same lump of clay 100 times before it obeys you. And then one day, a bowl rises beneath your fingers. A vase takes shape. Something functional and beautiful emerges from earth and water and heat. Pottery teaches you that transformation is slow, that mastery is earned, that creation is both violent and tender. You become someone who understands that worth is built, not given. Learn a language, inhabit a new way of seeing. Speak in tongues that unlock entire cultures, entire ways of thinking. Learning a language humbles you. It makes you a beginner again. You stumble over pronunciation, forget vocabulary, misunderstand idioms. And in that stumbling, you discover that there are concepts that exist in other language, but not in yours. Words for feelings you have felt but could never name. Language learning expands your mind. It teaches you that reality is not fixed, that the way you have been taught to see the world is only one among many. You become someone who can move between worlds, who understands nuance, who knows that translation is always an act of interpretation. Start a blog, claim a corner of the internet. Fill it with your voice, your ideas, your vision. Build an audience that comes to you because of what you think, not how you look. Writing for an audience teaches you to clarify your thoughts, to defend your positions, to articulate what you believe. It makes you accountable to your own evolution. You can look back and see how you have changed, what you once valued, where you were wrong. A blog becomes a record of your becoming. It is proof that you have something to say, that your perspective matters, that you are more than your availability to others. You become someone whose ideas precede them, whose writing people quote, whose words linger after the conversation ends. Choose one, choose several, but choose something that belongs to you alone. Something that asks nothing of you except presence. Something that makes you forget to check your phone, to wonder if they texted, to care whether anyone is watching. A quiet passion gives off a louder signal than constant availability. When your life genuinely interests you, everything shifts. You stop performing, you stop seeking constant reassurance, you become someone who exists fully, richly, independently, and that independence is the most seductive thing in the world. People sense it. They feel the pull of someone who does not need them, who has depth they cannot immediately access, who has somewhere else to be. Seduction is not about being seen, it is about being felt after you leave. This is not about being cold or distant, it's about being full, layered, self-contained, and slightly undiscovered. It is about cultivating mystique not through secrecy, but through selectiveness. Through having a life so absorbing that other people become a delicious addition rather than the entire meal. A woman or man with a ritual, a craft, or a private obsession becomes impossible to fully know. That is the point. There is elegance in being deeply engaged and slightly unreachable. Power in it. A quiet signal in a loud world. That is how you become unforgettable. Not by chasing, but by building. Not by waiting, but by becoming. Not by making yourself available on demand, but by creating a life so rich that your attention becomes the most valuable thing you have to give. Mystery survives only where boundaries are respected. So go, disappear in your craft, build your world, master your art, and when you emerge transformed, absorbed, utterly yourself, watch how differently people look at you. Watch how they lean in. Watch how they hunger for access to the parts of you that no longer need their approval to exist. And that's all for today. This is day 2 of reading. This is day 2 of reading. And this is The Art of Being Unreachable by Alexis McElroy. Have a good day, everyone.